Investor Intelligence provides general information only. You should consider seeking independent advice to see how this information relates to your unique circumstances. Please refer to the terms and conditions available at investorintelligence.com.au for more.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of Investor Intelligence, brought to you by the team at the Property Mentors. It's your weekly podcast for all things investment. Listeners, Happy New Year to you, and on behalf of the Investor Intelligence team, we hope you had a lovely break and are looking forward to what 2023 has to bring you. We're so excited to be back from holidays as we've got a very exciting year ahead of us. As far as the podcast, we've got some really great guests joining me to cover a whole range of topics. We've started making some video content, so we can't wait to get that out to you. And alongside that, even though we sort of started this towards the end of the year of last year, we'll be continuing to release our weekly newsletter. So you'll be well and truly up to date with everything. So plenty happening in that space. So do make sure you look out for that. But speaking of great guests, we are kicking off 2023 with a very special guest. Her name is Helen Mac. So Helen is a business coach who helps create the best possible results for small business owners. And over her illustrious career, Helen has coached and trained thousands of people to improve results in not only their businesses, but also their lives. Hi, Helen. Welcome.
Hi, Phoebe. It's lovely to be here, and Happy New Year to you and all of your listeners. Isn't it exciting starting 2023?
Starting fresh. I know. I'm so thrilled to have you here today. So, Helen, just before I get into a little bit more of a background as to why you're here today and why we were sort of seeking someone with your expertise to speak with me, I know I gave a very quick sort of explanation of what you do just then, but why don't you start off by telling me a little bit more about you, your experience, and how you got to where you are today?
Great, thank you very much for that opportunity to introduce myself, Phoebe. I've been in business coaching for a number of years, a long time, in a variety of different versions. So working in a training organisation or being an owner of a training organisation, and then as part of that training, we realised that just having people turn up for training and then send them off into the world really doesn't work. So we initiated follow-up coaching. So I've been doing that for decades. But my passion is for small business, for micro business. And lots of business coaches work with big businesses and they want to do executive coaching and so on. I actually really love working with startups, with micro businesses, with self-employed people who are just starting out and they're pretty much a solopreneur, as it sort of gets called these days, and then helping them. It's nice, isn't it? And then helping them develop the systems so that if they want to, they can grow their business. But I'm also not someone who says that every business startup wants to start an empire. So my other passion is that my job is to find out what the business owner really wants from their business and then help them deliver that. And because I've been doing this for so long, sounds like I'm ancient, doesn't it? But for a few years, and in so many different areas and industries, I'm really confident that I can literally say, I will either know the answer to your question, regardless of what the question is, or I'll know someone who does know the answer. And so that gives me a great opportunity to work with businesses in a variety of industries. I do specialise pretty much in sort of professional services and trades, and we may have time to talk about why those too, but all kinds of industries because of this amazing network. And it's one of the things that I recommend to small business owners is get a network of support people around you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you really get to see businesses kind of in their infancy and to the point where they start walking basically.
Yes, it's sort of like get them on their feet and then get them, because they need to crawl and then walk a bit like babies. They need to crawl and then walk before and some business owners try to sprint first and then of course they trip over and fall over and that's not great. So get them to grow at a size that means that they can do that sustainably and be really content with the outcomes, not just for their business, but as you said, for their lives. So some business owners have gone off that they start a business because they're all excited about doing their own thing. Then they realize that their own thing has actually taken over all of their world. And the reason that they got into business has vanished. Oh, I want to go into business for myself because I want to play more golf as well. I want to be able to go and see the kids' concerts. None of that happens because they're 36/7 beyond 24/7 just working in the business, and that's not good for anyone.
No, I can see that. Why? But you also do a lot of public speaking. Like you've done a TED talk in Melbourne. I watched that recently. It was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love doing that. What an exciting concept of getting, because I've been speaking for decades, and so trying to get my information down to, in those days, a 17-minute TED talk, and now they're 5 to 7 minutes because the audience's ability to watch long videos, like 17 minutes, has shrunk.
Oh, yeah.
But
the attention spans are shrinking, aren't they? Yeah,
hasn't it? And so that was a fascinating process of really drilling down what's the absolute essence of what I want to say. But the reason that I like speaking to groups and conferences and gatherings of people is because it's a point of leverage for me. I can get my message out to more people, and you and I have already chatted about there's another part of my message that at some stage, this is a bit of a teaser, isn't it? That some stage during the year we'll talk about my deeper message beyond getting small businesses up and running, but it's just an opportunity to get the message out to more people, and I love it. It's great fun.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. But so apart from the fact that you can speak to so many things and, you're a bit of an all-rounder when it comes to, coaching in the world of business, the original reason we wanted to seek a business coach is that one of the most common questions that we get asked is about people wanting to become self-employed or start their own small business while simultaneously wanting to build a property portfolio, and kind of whether or not that's smart to do so. I should say as well, a lot of investors in Australia are already business owners or self-employed. And, from conversations with our mortgage broker and talking to Luke, our CEO, sharing some stories of his early days running his own business, we kind of know that in these situations, it can be really difficult to get a loan from banks or finance approval because banks require them to have 2 years of financials. Can you tell me why it's the 2 years of financials that banks look at?
Oh, and just to put in another layer, of course, maybe 2 years of profitable financials. It's not just 2 years of, for the first 6 months we made less than, so it's actually 2 years of profitable running the business, which is very, very, very tricky. The reason is because banks are scaredy cats, and because so many businesses fail. So the most recent study of last year, so obviously it's very new information, but and this number has not changed in all of the time pretty much that I've been doing this kind of work, that 80% of businesses fail within the first 3 years, and 20% of the businesses in total, so a quarter of that 80%, fail in the first 12 months. So what the banks are really saying is, prove to us that you are going to, at the very least, be in the 60% that make it to 3 years, so that we can lend you some money, because it's a huge risk factor for them to lend. So people who've been in business for 6 months go to the bank and say, the business is going really well and I want a loan. And the banks go, you have a 1 in 5 chance that you're not going to be here in 6 months, and a 4 in 5 chance that you're not going to be here in 3 years. So we just want you to calm the farm and get your feet back under you for longer. I looked at some stats in the last 12 months. 350,000 businesses were registered.
Oh my
350,000. Wow. That's close to 1,000 a day. Oh now, 80% of them 3 years from now will be vanished. The banks want to know that you're one of the ones who'll stay.
Yeah. So to reiterate, basically, it's not just 2 years of financials, it's 2 years of good, profitable financials. Yeah. So you mentioned it's common that they fail in those first 2 years or first 3 years. So what are some of the reasons that you've seen through your coaching as to why they failed? Is it something that the small business owner is doing, or is it, the market?
Well, there's sort of 3 groups of areas that cause problems. One is insufficient cash flow to get started. So they start on the smell of an oily rag, and then the rag dries up and they don't have enough money to stay open. So it's an important process to look at how many months can I pay my mortgage, feed my family, pay for the expenses of the business before I'm going to really need some cash flow from the business, and make sure that you've got a little bit of a backup. Don't go in with no funding whatsoever, because that's a very big pain point. And often I'll be talking to someone who would love to expand their business, but they don't have the cash flow to, for example, pay for the staff that they need to expand. So make sure you've got a little kitty that you can work with.
Yeah, a bit of a buffer. Yeah.
A bit of a buffer. The second bit is potentially referencing what you just said, and that is that they haven't researched, that they're passionate about their service or product, but there's no market for it. So they've gone and kind of spent a lot of money and effort creating this thing, but they haven't done any testing of the market, or their offering is poorly communicated, poorly constructed, or poorly priced or costed. It's either, I remember working with one very, very passionate young man who started a cocktail business, and he outlaid money for a van and built this beautiful cocktail delivery bar thing, beautiful, neon lights and whatever, absolutely gorgeous. When I talked to him about the money, the numbers, he hadn't factored in his time to chop up, to go to the market, buy the fruit, chop up the fruit, go to the grog shop, the time that it took him to drive from his home to the venue, set up. As far as he was concerned, the profit was how much the people paid him for the gig. And I'm not a financial coach. I always recommend that people get financial advice. I'll talk about that in a minute. But he had no idea that he wasn't making any money, because he kept banking, he kept getting money into his bank account. It's like, oh, look, I'm making all this money. And I'd say, yeah, but you're not factoring in all these things.
Yeah.
So his costings were wrong. So they're the two. And then the third is that they're not systematic in the way that they are running their business early on, so that they can then leverage themselves, duplicate themselves, get people in to expand the business even a little bit. So they end up having to do everything themselves, and they just get completely exhausted and go, it was easier when I was working for someone else.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to go back to being an employee.
Right. Do you ever find that kind of passion to start the business, or the passion, whatever the business is about, or the product, sometimes does overtake them, and that kind of blindsides them to those little things that you're probably not going to find out until it's sort of too late?
Yes. So you and I have talked a little bit about, I'm passionate about preaching optimism as the achievement mindset, and it works beautifully for small business. But too much optimism is called delusion.
Yes.
And delusion, when you go too far and say, no, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, as you're driving over the edge of the cliff. So it's about being very practical in your approach, as well as looking for the best possible outcome. Make sure that you are backing that up with a practical, systematized, organized approach.
I'm sure that in those thousands of people you've coached and trained, there have been quite a few horror stories that you've probably seen.
It's terrifying how people get themselves tangled up. The good news is, if they do speak to a good business coach, not a life coach and not an accountant, but someone who actually can talk about the processes of building a business, that it can be rescued, as long as you haven't got yourself so far in the quicksand that it's up to your eyeballs. That there is often a way out, and sometimes it's taking a step backwards before you step forward. So sometimes you actually have to go, okay, I've got this massive team, and I'm spending more time and money on everyone else. I had one client who, what we had to do was actually, unfortunately, let go half of his team, because he was paying everybody else. And by the end, he had lots of full-time employees, but by the time he got down to, he was barely pulling a salary where everyone else was getting paid. And he was wondering why he was feeling so miserable about the business all the time. So we simplified the business. We pulled down the number of offerings. We consolidated, just simplified it all. And he felt like he could breathe for the first time in a long time, actually bank money for the first time in a long time. And then slowly, it was also about having a conversation with him about what did he want the business to deliver for him.
Yeah.
Because some people, the goal is, I want to build an empire, I want to take over the world, and and that's great. And if you want to do that, I'll get you started on that, and then I'll hand you over to someone who's really good at that. Whooshka, let's go global domination, because that's not my thing. I know what I'm good at, and that's what you need to be careful of when you're finding a business coach. Make sure you've got someone who does the bit that you need.
Yeah.
So if you need, if you've got everything else humming except marketing, get a marketing coach. Don't necessarily pay someone $1 bazillion. I'll do it for you. Just have the right conversations. If you need your numbers, get a financial biased one. There's a lot of us out there, a lot of great ones, a lot of ones who'll take your money and not deliver.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's why you shop around and make sure you get the one that's suited to you.
Have conversations with a few, And if I've had people who said, I've had a business coach before and I never got anywhere. I said, how long were you with them? 18 months. Really? You were paying someone for 18 months and your business didn't improve? Their business improved because you were paying them
they certainly did.
Totally. So, set some guidelines and if it's not feeling right in the first couple of sessions, then go find someone else. There's lots of people out there.
I think that's really great advice. Alongside getting yourself a good business coach, don't do things alone. I know a lot of people try to do things alone and it's just like, why? Who's got the time for it?
Well, and don't try. The other thing that a lot of solopreneurs, they are actually quite, the entrepreneur part of the solopreneur, they actually have a capacity to do all kinds of bits. So some things that I would highly recommend startup businesses or people who want to grow their business in 2023 or want to reshape, the best outcome for some of your listeners who are self-employed might be to reshape their businesses in 2023. Do less and make more money, or just slightly adjust your offering so that you open up a new target market. There's lots of ways. Like for me, business success is not just global domination or, it's about what does the business owner want to do. Sorry, I distracted myself. But what I was going to say was what you just said is a really valid thing. My major recommendation would be don't do it alone. There are so many great resources out there, virtual ones, like, of course, this fabulous podcast and your team who are a great resource for small business owners. And there are some fabulous other podcasts for all kinds of industries and all kinds of sections. I have a mate called Paul McCarthy, not Paul McCartney, Paul McCarthy. He's also a musician, but not quite at, Beatles level. And he has a great, he has a great podcast called the Marketers Club podcast. You can find it on wherever you get your podcasts. He does small business marketing. That's his speciality, and he's brilliant at it. So at the early stages when you can't afford to pay for marketing, get some advice from these virtual places like Marketers Club podcast. And also your local council or your state government, there are lots of free mentoring, we pay taxes. So free mentoring programs provided by your local council or your state government. So Google your local area, see if there's a mentoring process for new businesses. That sort of thing can be really, really helpful. And also some of the business networking groups are a really great way to hang out with like-minded people who are wanting to grow their business. And at the same time, you might actually get some leads or referrals for your business as well. So you get the business growth knowledge, hang out with people who understand that process, and there's a million of those. So
here at the Property Mentors, we have decades of experience investing in property. We know what to look for and what kind of impact it can have on your portfolio. We have access to brokers, accountants, and property managers to make sure your portfolio performs. Visit thepropertymentors.com.au to learn more.
What should businesses really do to avoid the ways that makes them fail in those first 2 or sort of 3 years?
So 3 things. Take time out to view your business. Startups are often so busy in the business that they need to get out and just take a view and go, okay, are we still going in the direction that we want to go in? And what's the next best thing for me to do? I've got one client at the moment who has the business has kind of just grown a bit like organically almost. And so there's multiple people doing the same thing, and some people not doing what he recruited them for because they like doing that other thing better, and he's not very good at managing that. And so we are really taking a helicopter view. So make sure you give yourself time. This is a great time of the year to do it. Take time to take half a step back and go, right, if I'm just in startup, how do I want this to go forward? And if I'm a little bit beyond that, if I was starting again, what would it look like? What outcomes do I want? And is what I'm doing now getting me the outcomes that I want? It's very easy to get into the business and lose track of why you started this in the first place. So that's number one. Number two is any task that you do as a business owner more than once that someone in the future is likely to be doing, capture what you're doing. Write it down, record it, video it, find a way to capture what you're doing, not because you're going to get someone to do it tomorrow, but because once your business grows, those jobs are going to need some kind of operations manual, guide, way of doing things. And the earlier you start that process, the easier it is. If you've been going for a while, you'll need someone to help you unpack your process because you will be doing it on autopilot, unconscious competence.
Love that. Yeah.
So one of the failings of small business owners is they expect that their new recruits will be psychic and know exactly what they're supposed to do and exactly how they're supposed to do it, because isn't that how everyone does it?
Yeah.
No, it's how you. That's right. It's how you do it, and so you have to have a way to. And I have a process that I work through to kind of, I call it unpack the business owner's brain. So we kind of, get in there and go, so how do you do it and why do you do it that way? And because I'm naive in their business, I can ask all the stupid questions.
Of course,
which then means that they go, why do I do it that way? Or this is why I do it that way, and that's why it's important that my new person does it that way. So that's very powerful. If you're a startup, do that. Start that as soon as possible. A well-formed ops manual is a joy as you grow your business. And then the third one is the people piece. As you start to grow, remember to recruit in slices and dices of your business. Don't try to recruit one of you that can do everything.
Yeah.
The reason you're special, the reason you've gone out and been brave enough to start a business is because you're special and multi-talented and can multitask and all of that. Regular folk out there are much better off if you give them something specific that they're really good at. And as I said before, if you can work out which of the bits in the business you love and are really good at, and then you slowly fill in the bits that you either don't love or you're not so good at, guess what? There are people out there who are really good at it and love doing it and would love to do it for you.
Yeah.
Everyone wins.
Love. They're all fantastic. They're all things I would never have thought of as well. I can see why a business coach would be so helpful for something like this. But going off that then, and I don't know if some of these might sound a bit similar, but what are some good habits or concepts or behaviours that people starting out in business can practice in order to reach the best chance of success?
I think that it's about, part of it is about the approach. So I mentioned before that you have to run that fine line between optimism and delusion. So I'm a big preacher that positive thinking has a negative outcome.
Yeah.
So positive thinking, which, it'll all be fine. Positive thinking misses the action imperative. So take an optimistic view, seek out the best possible outcomes, and that's where you use resources, Google, go online, call a friend, all of those things that we talked about before. Look for the best possible outcome and then take baby steps towards it. Don't try to fix everything overnight. Tiny steps will get you there. Running too fast, as I said way back at the start, running too fast, you're likely to trip over yourself and fall over. So baby step, even though that can be a bit frustrating, baby steps will get you there.
Yeah.
So look for the best possible outcome, identify what you're going to do, take baby steps towards it. And then a related approach or attitude or concept is if you get good feedback from the universe, so you take some small steps and you get a new client or you find a new supplier or you get a good Google review, then keep doing that.
Yeah.
The universe rewards momentum, rewards action. If you're getting no feedback or negative feedback, then because you've taken small steps, you can backtrack more easily and adjust. So don't necessarily commit all of your resources and all of your time and all of your effort to this new thing without testing it. It'll, try a version of it, try a trial, try it, see how you go. If you get, yeah, that's fantastic, then keep going and building. And if you kind of get crickets, nothing, like, what? Is anyone out there? Maybe you need to take a couple of steps back and go, how else could I do this? What's missing from this equation? So baby steps in the direction will get you there.
I love that, because baby steps as well, even if you do get some negative feedback or something doesn't quite work out, it's not like you've taken this gigantic leap and the whole thing's not worked out for you. You can, as you said, you can really just sort of take a couple of steps back and try again.
And then with that new information, you'll be able to make a better decision next time. And sometimes it's a bit like if you go in one direction and no, another direction, no, another direction, and then the third or fourth iteration you go, look at that, the world has opened up and the path is clear and let's go. And then you realize that the learnings that you've had from all those little trial pieces have helped you with the final result.
No, I love that. That's amazing. So, Helen, just to wrap up, this has been so insightful already. But so a variation of this question gets asked to all of our guests, and this would be a question that you're probably used to being asked, being a mentor and a coach. But what would be your sort of key piece of advice to kind of anything we've spoken about today? It doesn't have to be related to business. It can just be in any scenario. It could be both if you're feeling generous. But what's your sort of key piece of advice that sticks with you?
I think from a personal life perspective, my key piece of advice for a business owner is to make sure that you are running the business, not the other way round. If the business is running you and your personal life is suffering, kids need a photo of you to know who you are, haven't been out on a date with your spouse for however long, you've stopped doing those things you enjoy, whether that's sport or cinema or reading or whatever, then your business is running you instead of the other way around. And you really need to stop and have a look. And from a business, so that's kind of business and personal, but that's from a personal perspective as a business owner. And from a business perspective as a business owner, I'm going to actually be a bit trite and say Rome wasn't built in a day, neither were any massively successful businesses. So one step at a time. It's not going to, what is it, the Palmolive ad? It won't happen overnight, but it will happen.
Yeah,
business success is not an overnight phenomenon. If you talk to anyone, talk to the big names, the Richard Bransons, the Greg Normans, they all go, started small, baby steps, and here I am now, overnight a success. No.
Yeah, that's the exact same we say about property investment. It doesn't happen overnight. You have to be so patient with it.
So true. And if you want to start a property portfolio, the best time to do it is 10 years ago. And the next best time is today.
Our CEO would love you. He says that all the time. Oh, Helen, what a joy to speak to you today. You could definitely expect another invite on the podcast very soon, because even just from talking to you, I've been taking all these notes as to all these other topics I'd love to pick your brain about. But this has been so insightful. Thank you so much for your time. Where can people go to find out more about you, or if they want to reach out to you?
Fabulous. So the easy way, the good news is my website is really easy to remember. So it's www.helenmac.com. HELENMAC.com is the website, and obviously there are contact details and things on that. But I'd like to make an offer to your listeners that I have a business assessment tool that I use that is normally a paid environment where they fill in a questionnaire. It's a really good assessment, whether you're in startup or whether you're in business growth mode. It goes through all of the elements of that businesses need to succeed, finance, communications, marketing, HR, all of those sorts of things. It takes a little while to fill in. It's lots and lots of questions. And then I do a debrief with you and go, here are the things that you should focus on first. This is completely no frills attached. No, I'm happy to just do this for your listeners, because I'm passionate about small businesses succeeding. And if some of them want to succeed with my help, that's great. But just if we can get more small businesses if we can kill off that 20%, collapses in the first 12 months and that would be great. So if they just email me at helenmac.com, and just in the subject line put Property Mentors Podcast or Investor Intelligence, then I'll know that that's what it is, and I'll send them an invitation to catch up for a quick 10-minute chat. As I said, no attachment to that, just so I can talk briefly about where they're at in their business. Then they'll get the link to the questionnaire. They'll get the complimentary, courtesy of you guys, assessment of where they're at and what the best half a dozen things that they can do in their business, given where they're at. We'll be delighted to help.
That's incredibly generous of you. Thank you so much, Helen. I'll make sure to put all that in the show notes for anyone who just wants a quick link to all of that and your contact details. But that's just incredible. Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. It's been delightful talking to you, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
If you found this episode or any of our episodes helpful, please make sure to share and leave a rating to help us reach more people on their investing journeys. And of course, subscribe to be notified when new episodes drop. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Investor Intelligence Podcast. You can find links to our other socials in the show notes, including a link to the Property Mentors weekly blog. If you're ready to get your property portfolio in shape for financial freedom, check out Luke's latest book, Property Fit. You can get yourself a copy at www.propertyfitbook.com.au.